Good afternoon, everybody. I know I am the last person, the last presenter, and I'm standing between you and freedom. So I will try to make this interesting and short. And please, by all means, if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'm here to help out and answer. So I will be discussing how FDA is handling inspections related to biological soil amendments. And one of the things that I want to talk about more than anything, just a little overview, what to expect during an inspection, and I'll touch base from the planning process of the inspection approach, specifically related to biological soil amendments of animal origin, the type of questions that we will specifically or typically ask, and the types of things that we will be looking for during an inspection. I'll touch base on records. And the last thing would be to discuss what have we seen so far, or what has FDA seen so far. One of the things that I do want to mention, though, is it is extremely important, you guys that have the knowledge out in the farm, the processes, the procedures, that you share some of that information with us, with whether if it's FDA or if it's the state agency that is conducting your inspection. This will assist both FDA and the state to verify that the biological soil amendments of animal origin that you are using do not appear to be a route of contamination to produce. So again, we do encourage any type of knowledge that you can provide to us and share some of those experiences with us. So what to expect during a regulatory inspection? I know for the state of Arkansas, the Arkansas Department of Agriculture is conducting the produce safety rule inspections. But for us, for FDA, the way that the inspection kind of starts, we start with a pre-announcement. Most of these inspections will be pre-announced and scheduled. These are typically scheduled within 5 days of making contact with the most responsible person of the business. And from time to time, there could be inspections that may be unannounced in certain circumstances. This could be if the farm has had any produce safety issues in the past that have not been verified by FDA as corrected, a potential follow-up inspection, or if the farm is unresponsive or unwilling to set a date for the inspection. During these pre-announcement calls, basically what we're trying to do is we are trying to, figure out what kind of activities are happening at the farm. Now, we understand that the produce safety rule is based on 4 activities, which is the growing, the harvesting, the packing, and the holding of covered produce. So during the pre-announcement call, we definitely want to establish what kind of activities are happening at the farm during the scheduled time that we're planning on being out there, as well as, the type of personnel. Are you going to have people harvesting out in the field? Are you going to have people packing? And as well as any type of biosecurity procedures that you have implemented and that we must follow once we get to your facility or to your farm. And then during the initial interview, so once we arrive and we present our credentials and issue a 482, which is the notice of inspection, we basically start discussing, to understand the layout of your operation. And more than anything, kind of figure out what covered activities are happening at the time that we arrive for the inspection. And this would kind of give us a good idea of the walkthrough of the farm. So, kind of start planning how we're going to go ahead and go about the inspection. While we're doing the walkthrough of the farm, everything is going to be based on observation. So we will be looking at, your harvest crew, harvesting produce. If you have a packing crew out in the field or at a packing shed, we will want to take a look at that. And at the same time, we will be asking a lot of questions that align with the produce safety rule. And in the event of this walkthrough, if we were to see any type of, potential issues, those will be discussed with you in real time. And lastly, would be the exit interview. So during the exit interview, you will get documentation basically closing out the inspection. And if any observations or discussion items were noted, those will be included in the closeout of the inspection. One thing that I do want to say, to prepare for an inspection, if you fall under the scope of the produce safety rule, please, complete the Produce Safety Alliance grower training requirement. The other thing would be try to schedule an on-farm readiness review, and be very familiar with Part 112, which is the actual produce safety rule, and any other related guidance documents that are out available. So, the type of questions and observations that we're looking for. More than anything, we understand that subpart F establishes the required practices for reducing the risk of produce contamination from certain soil amendments that consist of materials from animal origin. And these topics of this subpart basically discuss or include the requirements for handling, conveying, and storing biological soil amendments of animal origin. Any type of, the prohibitions regarding the use of human waste, the treatment processes and microbial standards that apply to those processes, the actual application of biological soil amendments of animal origin, and the record keeping requirement. So, any biological soil amendment of animal origin, of course, there's always has that potential to be a route of on-farm contamination of produce and the use of unsafe agricultural practices. And this is specifically more to untreated biological soil amendments of animal origin. So again, one of the first things that we want to do upon arrival, and once we get to subpart F of the produce safety rule, is does your farm use biological soil amendments of animal origin? If you do not, then subpart F of the rule does not apply to your farm. However, if you do, how are they being used? Are you treating your own biological soil amendments of animal origin? And are you maintaining documentation of the way that you're treating these soil amendments? One of the typical questions, would be, does the operation, or do you, how does the operation handle, store, or convey soil amendments of animal origin? Are they being handled, stored, or conveyed in a manner or location that prevents it from becoming a source of contamination to cover produce? And this is where we kind of start discussing. We get into the treated biological soil amendments. Are all biological soil amendments used at your farm treated? And if they are, we definitely want to establish, the type of treated biological soil amendments. Now, keep in mind, if these soil amendments of animal origin have been treated and stored properly, there are no restrictions on the use, right? And you can always visit the draft guidance document, and it provides a lot of examples when it comes to treated biological soil amendments of animal origin. For these treated soil amendments of animal origin, did the farm apply the soil amendments in a manner that minimizes potential contact with covered produce? I will not go in depth into agricultural teas. I know Dr. Ingram, covered agricultural teas. Just one important thing is agricultural tea is made in accordance with the requirements of 112.51. So the one thing that we will take a look at if you are making agricultural teas is evaluate the quality of the water used in the preparation of this agricultural tea. For untreated biological soil amendments of animal origin, we want to identify those untreated soil amendments of animal origin that you are using. Keep in mind, these untreated biological soil amendments include incomplete or partially treated soil amendments of animal origin and recontaminated. And one of the reasons that we want to figure out, the type of application method is untreated biological soil amendments of animal origin must be applied in one of two ways. The application must be conducted in a manner that does not contact covered produce during the application and minimizes the potential for contact with covered produce after application, or in a manner that does not contact covered produce during or after application. So how are these biological soil amendments of animal origin used? So one of the things that we want to do, we want to figure out during the inspection is, again, how are they being handled? How are they being transported? How are they being stored? Again, we understand that the use of untreated soil amendments of animal origin could be a potential source of contamination to growing areas, to any adjacent water sources, to any water distribution systems. So, kind of get an idea, what are the land features, maybe have a topography, kind of map of the area, is there any drainage? What about wind drift? Any rain, any severe rain events in the last couple of weeks? Is there any runoff from that manure pile, into your growing areas? Again, the proximity to a crop and timing of any neighboring crops. And the separation between untreated and treated soil amendments of animal origin. One of the other things would be the equipment. Do you have equipment that is specifically dedicated for the cleaning and equipment that is specifically used for the application of biological soil amendments of animal origin? And if you don't, if this equipment is being used both for application of these biological soil amendments, and you're also using them to conduct covered activities, what is the cleaning and sanitizing cycle or period of the equipment? So we want to evaluate, the storage location for your untreated soil amendments, and are they affected by any runoff from rain or intentionally added water, causing contamination to covered produce or any growing areas. So if you are using, once we kind of get into records, does the farm have records? So if you are using biological soil amendments from a third party, what type of documentation are you maintaining? So if these soil amendments are being treated by a third party, we will review what is called, a certificate of conformance from the third party that basically shows that soil amendment of animal origin was treated using a scientifically validated process. And the data biological soil amendment of animal origin was conveyed and stored in a manner to minimize the risk of contamination. So one of the things that we want to do for treated is during that documentation that they're providing, that the process, again, used by your supplier to treat this soil amendment is a scientifically validated process that has been carried out with appropriate process of monitoring, right? And this monitoring would be the monitoring of time, temperature, moisture content, and pH. And number two, that they have been handled, conveyed, and stored in a manner and location to minimize the risk of contamination. For any biological soil amendments treated by the farm, are you maintaining documentation of these? So in this instance, you must establish and keep documentation of that process. And I will touch base on the next slide, but for example, would be the time, the temperature, and the turnings. So the Produce Safety Alliance has issued, or has come out with a couple of record keeping templates. But for subpart F, when it comes to records under 112.60, for soil amendments that the grower treats and applies on their own farm, records must be kept to document that process controls. Those would be the time, the temperature, and the turnings were achieved. Records related to on-farm soil amendment treatment must be reviewed, dated, and signed by a supervisor responsible party within a reasonable time after the record was made. And for soil amendments received from a third party, growers must document annually that the process used to treat that biological soil amendment of animal origin is a scientifically validated process that it was carried out with appropriate process monitoring, and that it has been handled, conveyed, and stored in a manner and location to minimize the risk of contamination. So this is basically a sample of the Produce Safety Alliance record keeping template. Again, you do not have to use this document. This is just out there for your benefit. If you are treating your own, if you are making your own compost, or you are treating your own biological soil amendments, this is a record keeping template that pretty much has the specific requirements that subpart F of the produce safety rule requires. And last, what have we seen so far during some of the FDA inspections? So just kind of briefly regarding biological soil amendments during inspections, about 20 to 25% of the farms FDA has inspected are using soil amendments of animal origin, and all of these have been treated. And they are applying it in a manner that minimizes potential contact with covered produce, and it does not contact covered produce. And most from third party are brought into the farm as needed. So we really haven't seen a time where, or it's not consistent where we're seeing a lot of treated biological soil amendments being stored at a facility. So they're kind of bought as needed, and there's no necessity for storage. And there has been, some discussions with the farms regarding the adequacy of the third-party records. And that's all I have for you guys today. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you.